The era of a spineless Democratic Party must end. Now is not the time for wimpy concessions and then call it a win-win. Not when the American dream has been killed for so many people in America. And now is not the time to shy from a fight against corruption. Our people see it and they know that our government has allowed the economy to be rigged against people. Those villains, that corruption, they want you to think the problem is some woke college kid or some trans kid who wants their liberty, wants their freedom. That's not why your prescription drugs are expensive. It's not why housing is expensive. It's that corruption and those villains who want you thinking that when they're the ones who've made life terrible for people. We know the real root of the problem is corruption and corporate power run amok. And too many have been pathetic at talking about corruption and showing that they're up for this fight. And some on this side of the aisle have been complicit, helping corporations plunder this country. That should end. And we have to be willing to go to the mat for an economy that works for people who work hard, who play by the rules and want the American dream back. The roots of this party that I'm proud to be a part of go back to the New Deal. It is a working class party at its core. Allowing somebody else to fake economic populism and win power is real and dangerous, and we are living through the cost of it right now. But again, the people you're here from today, they work hard and fight hard for their districts. They get this. They're not faking populism, and they know how to win in places where you got to win. The American people are mad. They should be mad. And look, this administration's approval ratings, they're in free fall. American people are rejecting so much of what we see. But too many on my side of the aisle aren't giving a strong enough alternative, a bold enough alternative. And while the president's numbers may be in free fall, we also see favorability of the Democratic Party at record lows, the lowest CNN has seen since 1992. There has not been a strong enough vision from Democrats on this side of the aisle. We have something to say. Our party needs to change, and economic populism and patriotism should be where we go, standing up for people to revive the American dream. Democrats should be fighting hard against corruption, and the giant corporations who fund so much of that. We should be fighting against anyone else, any force, any company, you name it, that has made life a ripoff for our people. Folks are mad, and they should be. It's justifiable anger. The American dream is gone for too many people. People who work hard, who play by the rules, and yet can't catch a break, who see life as too expensive. People are right. The American people understand that our economy has been rigged against so many. And I say the American dream hasn't slipped away, it has been ripped away. I'm 40 years old. My generation, and those younger than me, the first generation in a long time since the Second World War, who now grows up and don't expect to be better off than their parents. That's what the American dream is all about. It didn't just happen on accident. There are villains here. Corporate power and corruption have been eating away at the American dream. Hedge funds, speculators buying up houses, jacking up the cost of that housing, becoming lousy landlords, pricing people out of what could be a nest egg for their retirement, their home. Monopolies jacking up prices and killing small businesses every chance they can get. Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, raising the cost of medicine, killing local pharmacies. The list goes on and on. Now, this president and others on the other side have capitalized on this anger, used it to get power, lift up their efforts now to let robber barons plunder this government, to attack the fundamental bargain with our seniors and veterans and so many others. Democrats need to wake up and stop defending elites and the establishment. They have failed the American people. Across both parties, those who have been in power have failed at the fundamental task of protecting and strengthening the American dream. So today, a group of us are coming forward, coming to the floor, proposing a new way ahead for Democrats, a new way ahead for this country. We need a fighting spirit of economic populism. It is patriotic. We need this patriotism to be at the heart of this fight and our fight against corruption and anyone else who's in the way of our people and who has wrecked the American dream. So what does this mean, this economic populism? In a sentence, it is fighting for a life that people can afford. It's bringing corporate power to heel. It is taking on the corruption that pervades this town, Washington. And the economy and what life costs people should never be an afterthought for anyone who serves in a chamber like this. And it ought to put the people who work their butts off front and center of what our government does and who we think about every day and every action. It is fighting for a life that people can afford, and it is bringing corporate power to heel. Because we know that out-of-control corporate power leads to higher cost. It leads to worse safety. It leads to lower quality, and we see it play out across so much of our economy. It's weakened our defense industrial base, and thus it's weakened our military. It's hurt small businesses across main streets all over our districts. It has crushed workers. It has led to rising costs that we all live with. And we should take on corruption no matter where we see it, no matter the party. The last thing that we need is a bunch of wimps looking for a win-win every time. Not every fight is going to have a win-win. There are villains in this story, in this society of ours, who have made life miserable for so many. You call them robber barons, you call them oligarchs, whatever you want. But we got to be willing to take them on. And this embrace of economic populism, it might sound and look different depending on where in the country or who the messenger is. For me, I'm a Navy guy. I served at sea. I served in Iraq. To me, this is a patriotic and righteous fight. And I'm from Western Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt, a place where we saw the rich and powerful plot to strip us for parts. We're the people who made the steel that built America. We've always answered this country's call. Those efforts to strip us, to wreck our way of life, no more. So I'm proud to introduce my colleague from the great state of Connecticut, the gentle lady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, and yield 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
Let me just say thank you to my colleague from Pennsylvania, who at his roots understands the plight of working Americans, middle-class families, working families, and the vulnerable, and stands tall on their behalf and wants to utilize the good offices of this institution to make sure that it does what the Founding Fathers intended it to do, and that is to provide opportunity for people in this nation. That's what my friend Congressman Deluzio is all about. And one thing about this current administration is clear. They are doing nothing about the cost of living crisis in this nation, which is getting worse. President Trump said he will fight for the working class, but instead put Elon Musk and billionaires in charge of our government. I applaud again Representative Deluzio for hosting this special order, economic patriotism, taking on corporate power, as well as for all his work supporting the right to organize, creating well-paying union jobs here in America. High prices are devastating the middle class, working class, and the vulnerable. Since my very first day in the Congress, I have been focused on lowering the cost of living for Americans who struggle to get by. And I am appalled by how many families who are struggling to afford basics while corporations get bigger, richer, and more influential over our lives than ever. President Trump, as I said, campaigned on lowering prices. He pledged to, quote, bring food costs down on day one. Instead, the opposite has happened. Food costs are rising. His own USDA, Department of Agriculture, recently reported egg prices could rise 41% over the next year. Since taking office, he has done nothing to help families struggling at the grocery checkout. As a result, big corporations are consolidating, creating monopolies, and making unbelievable profits. Cal-Maine, which controls about 1/5 of the domestic egg market and is the largest producer and distributor of shell eggs in the United States, has reported that its profits through the second quarter of 2025 fiscal year are 342% higher than the same period last year. Instead of doing anything to address this cost of living crisis, the president has stacked his cabinet with billionaire after billionaire, empowering them to slash the programs American families rely on, with no oversight, no disclosures about their conflicts of interest. Elon Musk, the unchecked billionaire leading the efforts to end Social Security as we know it, owes the success of his companies to billions in federal contracts and huge factories in China. Yet he refuses to answer any questions from the Congress about his investments. These issues concern every American. Democrats are standing up for them, standing up against the blatant corporation of this administration, the giant corporations padding their profits at the expense of the middle class and the working class. And the Republican focus is to rip away programs like Social Security and Medicaid. The fact is that American families today are living paycheck to paycheck. And some of the biggest corporations in the country are taking advantage of it, all while Americans are paying more for less due to corporate price gouging, shrinkflation, and while the CEOs of the nation's largest grocery stores and supermarkets rake in record salaries. I just came from a congressional hearing, our Steering and Policy Committee, Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, on food prices and food stamps, and listening to the stories of working Americans with families who are hard-pressed and who are frightened to death of a $230 billion cut to the food stamp program, which would end that lifeline for themselves and for their families. And last year, the FTC identified the large grocery store chains exploited product shortages due to the pandemic by raising prices significantly, more than needed to cover their added costs, and they have continued to increase their profits. What is the Republicans' response to this cost of living crisis, driven by corporate consolidation and power? Why? To give out even more corporate tax cuts, of course. $4.5 trillion worth of them, to be precise, paid for by slashing Medicaid, which serves nearly a third of all Americans. Enough is enough, and it is time for this Congress, and it is time for Democrats to act to rein in this habitual price gouging from massive corporations, rein in the unchecked billionaires enriching themselves while Americans suffer, and rein in the Republican spending cuts targeting Social Security and Medicaid. If the Trump administration continues to prioritize tax cuts for the rich over price cuts for the middle class, then I will continue to stand with my colleagues as we call out their broken promises and fight back against their disastrous policies. There is another path forward, one which Democrats and Republicans could take together, a path of economic patriotism, where we take on corporate monopolies and the self-serving billionaires who are squeezing the middle class, the working class, and the vulnerable. A path that listens to the American people, protects programs like Medicaid and Social Security, while lowering the cost of living through proven policies like the expanded child tax credit, which lifted half of our children in this nation out of poverty, lowered the hunger rate, and provided a path forward in economic security for millions of families in the United States. That's the path that I am taking. It's the path that I know my colleague, Congressman Deluzio, is taking, and I hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will join us in this effort. And I thank you for organizing this effort.